Hi, I'm Ken Tran with GeekBeat, and today I'm going to show off the Olympus OMD EM5 Micro Four Thirds camera. The OMD EM5 is the flagship Micro Four Thirds camera from Olympus. At 16 megapixels, the EM5 has one of the most advanced sensors on the market, rivaling not only other mirrorless cameras such as the Sony NEX5 and the Panasonic GH3, but even some of the more traditional DSLRs like the T4i and the 60D. The EM5 has by far the most dynamic range of any mirrorless camera, able to shoot up to 5,000 ISO natively and 25,000 ISO with internal processing. And while it can't keep up against a full-frame sensor such as the 5D, the EM5 can definitely hold up a respectable position against crop-frame DSLRs, especially in low-light situations. With shutter bugs in mind, the Olympus gave the EM5 a gorgeous and crystal clear electronic viewfinder that has a bigger view than some DSLR viewfinders such as the Canon 60D. In addition, because it's electronic, the EM5's EVF allows you to see things such as the focus assist zooms, histograms, and depth of field previews right in the viewfinder itself, which is something you definitely can't do with a normal DSLR. Also, the sensor in the EVF toggles between the viewfinder and the traditional live view on the gorgeous swiveling back display when you move the camera from your eye and to held out in front of you. As for the display, it's a very bright and easy to use touchscreen with easy access to all of your common controls. What's even better is the great new Super Control panel, which allows you to change up settings very quickly. Annoyingly though, that mode is actually disabled by default. Moving on, one of the biggest selling points of the EM5 is the revolutionary 5-axis in-camera image stabilizer. Traditionally, image stabilization is built into the lens itself. But if the lens didn't have a built-in image stabilizer, or the stabilizer didn't work with your current camera body, you're kind of out of luck. In the EM5 though, Olympus decided to go in a different direction and built the image stabilization into the body itself. It works pretty much how you would imagine, with a combination of gyroscopes and smart processing that physically moves the camera sensor to counter the movement of the body, giving you a much sharper, stabilized image no matter what lens you're using. This has some great synergy with the other great strength of mirrorless cameras, their ability to easily adapt legacy 35mm film lenses to use. Now you can use that old 30-year-old glass on your parents had on an advanced digital body and still have some of the image stabilization to help with those handheld situations. The second major selling point of the EM5 that makes it special is that the EM5 is the first mirrorless interchangeable with a rugged camera build. Made out of rugged magnesium alloy and aluminum, the EM5 is splash-proof, rain-proof, and dust-proof. I can even pour this glass of water onto my camera and it won't even phase it. Take it outside and onto the beach in the rain and you don't have to worry about liquid and sand messing up the internals, assuming you are using a weather-sealed lens. Sadly, there aren't very many of those weather-sealed lenses out on the market, and it's something I really hope that Panasonic and Olympus start doing more of. The third major selling point of the EM5 is that it also has the world's fastest autofocus system. When paired with the kit lens, the focus speed is nearly instantaneous, and the continuous focus tracking works exceptionally well. While roaming the streets of Dallas, I rarely had a situation where I had trouble focusing instantly. The biggest issues were when it was super dark and there was very little contrast on the scene for it to lock onto. One thing I did wish though was more expansive autofocus. The EM5 uses a grid-type system for focus points, but it suffers from the grid boxes being a little bit too large sometimes compared to like a 61 focus points of a 5D. In addition to the world's fastest autofocus though, the EM5 has a mind-blowing 9 FPS full quality sequential shooting speed with a 16-shot buffer. What that means is comparing that to a 5D only has a 6 FPS burst speed, and the 7D only has an 8 FPS burst speed, whereas here you can see that the lesser cost mirrorless camera can actually shine by shooting faster than those cameras. So how does this camera perform when you're actually using it? Well, the EM5 is a great feeling camera. The EM5 is about half the size of a standard DSLR, and the lightweight reflects that just as well. It's never felt flimsy though, and I never was worried about the build quality holding up to a more kinetic photographer. Looking at the body, you may notice that the Olympus decided to appeal to the classic generation of camera design. The EM5 is greatly influenced and an obvious descendant of the great-great-grandfather, the OMD1. It definitely plays into the nostalgia aspect and disguise as well. On more than one occasion while using my old lens adapted to the EM5, I had people stop me on the street and ask me if I was shooting with an old film camera. They were surprised to see that it was actually a digital camera that was styled in a classic way. It's a gorgeous camera to look at. The EM5 feels great in the hands. It's light, the controls are generally easy to reach for me. I have small hands though, and those with larger fingers might have trouble cleanly pressing all of the buttons on the back. Further in mimicking the design of yesterday, the EM5 also employs 3 control dials on the top, one for the various camera shooting modes, and 2 more custom dials that can change depending on the mode itself. Generally, one will control the primary camera mode, say the aperture and aperture priority, and the other will control the exposure compensation, allowing you to adjust it up or down as the scene requires. In manual mode, the dials control aperture and shutter speed independently, since there is no exposure compensation in that mode. Natively, there are two dedicated user-assigned function buttons, one on the top and one on the back, and one dedicated movie record button, which you can actually reassign to do something else. On the back, you also have a 4-way directional pad, which you can assign to different functions as well for quick access to settings. While I do love this camera dearly, there are a few nagging issues I wish Olympus would work on for their next revision. First, the menu system in EM5 is needlessly complex sometimes. The menu system is fairly full-featured and you can do a lot of it, but all the functionality you get comes at a cost of having deeply nested menus to get some of the more basic functions. You can assign some of these functions to quick buttons, but there isn't enough quick buttons to assign everything you would normally want to do. Fortunately, you can access most capture settings through the live preview HUDs, but I still would rather see more options for assigning settings to buttons themselves. The second issue is the disappointingly limited video recording features. While the EM5 takes amazingly good AVC HD video up to 1080-60i, the EM5 does not have the ability to shoot 24 FPS. Nor does it have a microphone jack, which I think is a huge oversight in my opinion. And the HDMI port merely shows you a slideshow playback. It does not show live HDMI feeds. It isn't capable of monitoring the video in real time, and the EM5 feels like an 80% photo camera and 20% video camera, which in today's age of cameras that shoot both video and photography, it's a huge weakness. It's true that you can buy an adapter to add a microphone jack, but I don't want to spend another $100 on an add-on that should have been built in to begin with. The third issue is I wish that the display screen, while crystal clear and easy to use, would rotate all the way forward, allowing you to do self-portrait and self-video. Now, as a disclaimer, I've made a few bold claims about the EM5 that some of you may object to. Notably, Panasonic, who is actually a partner with Olympus in pushing the Micro Four Thirds system, has taken notice of the EM5 and how it compares to a hugely popular GH line. Panasonic last month announced the GH3, which is a successor to their widely popular GH2. According to the preliminary testing, the GH3 might have just slightly more dynamic range than the EM5, with the advantage of being about one stop of light. Despite these issues, I still think that EM5 is the best camera I've ever used, at least until I get my hands on a GH3. I've taken several hundred photos in the last 6 months I've owned this camera, and it's been a true joy to use the entire time. When I was using it, I felt like I was back in the 60s and 70s during the golden age of cameras, and even more so when I was using it with one of my older legacy lenses. This camera was designed for the shutterbug, especially the street photographer. With its high speed, great low light performance, and exceptional build quality, the OMD EM5 is definitely on the short list of cameras to consider. And as such, the OMD is easily an editor's choice in my opinion. Now, if you get an EM5, I would highly recommend skipping the standard 14-42 kit lens and getting the upgraded 12-50 weather-sealed kit lens to go with it. While it's not the fastest or the best lens in the world, it's a very sharp lens designed explicitly to work with the EM5, and the synergy is unquestioned when you use the two together. Be sure to check out the blog post on geekbeat.tv for full image downloads taken from this camera, as well as more close-up pictures of the design itself. And if you love this type of in-depth review of gear, be sure to give it a thumbs up and leave us a comment on your thoughts on this camera. My name is Ken Tran, and thanks for watching.